Well, good morning and welcome back to Crowley House Flower Farm and Nursery. Today we're working on planting up some ranunculus, and we have two different kinds. We have your traditional, and then we have some butterfly ranunculus, which are really large. They have more of an open face. So I thought I would just go through with you how we do it here on the farm and the varieties that we're growing this year. Also in today's video, I do have a wedding that Riley is working on in the studio, so I thought we would bop in and just check it out. It is a very fall and moody kind of white and brown and terracotta wedding, which is very, very trendy this year. We've done a lot of these weddings. We haven't shown them all here on our YouTube channel, but I think we've done a couple so far that we have shown. Anyways, I thought you guys might really enjoy that, so I'm gonna bop in with her from time to time. But first, we're gonna go do the ranunculus planting with Keith. If you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, we would love to have you tag along with us here at Crowley House. And also, if you'd like to join in our Patreon, we would love to have you as well. I'll put a link below. That just gives you a little more inside look at what we do here on the farm, and there's different levels. Anyways, here is the ranunculus video. All right, you guys, so I have Keith working on some of the ranunculus that we went ahead and soaked overnight, and those are some of the new varieties that we pulled in. The really cool thing is if you jet over to the links below, I'm going to have our Shopify account there, which you can buy some of the corms yourself if you would like. That being said, they're really fun to grow, but they do take a little bit of care and time to process. This is a ranunculus corm. We have anemones as well, which look a little bit different. So it's kind of almost like, I don't know, like a turd. Doesn't that look like a turd?
Probably is.
No, it probably is. I don't know. No, it looks like kind of like a rock or something. Anyways, so you can kind of say, I always say that the ranunculus look like an octopus, and this just, I don't know, looks like a clump of dirt or a turd, I guess. Anyways, so these are hard, and so what you want to do is you want to soak them. And we soak them for anywhere from 4 to 8 hours on average, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. The reason we do that is to just hydrate them again, and then they will look. So here's some that Keith soaked for us. So this is what it looks like all plumped up. So it's really kind of cool. They're just nice and plump, ready to go in. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, so we're gonna put them in some soil after we have soaked them. I'm gonna show you what Keith's doing there. But first of all, I'm gonna show you kind of how I soak these. So our ranunculus and anemones come in these big bags, but if you didn't have these, you could probably just purchase like a mesh bag, or sometimes, you know, when I was first starting out and I was only doing a few at a time, I just get a little bowl and turn the faucet just to a little dribble in the kitchen and soak my corms in there for my 4 to 8 hours and just kind of let the water kind of circulate. You could give it a little stir every once in a while with your hands. The reason we do that is mainly to keep the bacteria down and also to kind of aerate the water so the corm doesn't kind of like suffocate, basically. So we want to kind of keep that going to help that resist some of the diseases and things like that. We have a really cool trick here on the farm that we use, basically our tea composter. It's got water, bubbles, does all the things. So when we're not using it for that, we will go ahead and use it for our corms, and that just keeps the water agitated. Really, really cool. We do several bags at a time, and we have, so this bag that Keith did, the key is to write your tag prior to soaking so that you can keep each one exactly what you want, so you don't confuse them all. Okay, so let's head on over and see what Keith's doing.
Hey guys, just here in the greenhouse with Beth. Like she said, we're working on the ranunculus and the anemones. We just take a crate like this, has some slats in it, obviously underneath as well. That'll help drain the water out as we're watering them. Just put the brown, basically paper in, same paper that we use to wrap our bouquets. About 1 inch to 2 inches roughly in that measurement of soil on the bottom. And then we're just placing the corms with the actual legs going down, so then it'll grow up out of the top. And then we'll lightly cover it with some more soil. Again, you don't want to bury them deep down in there, but just cover it enough so you can't really see them. And then we'll just water them periodically as they need it. So exciting to be planting things for next year. So this is just going to be a temporary home for the ranunculus, probably just a couple weeks until they start sprouting. Then we'll actually transplant them from these containers into the actual beds in the greenhouse. Obviously right now, as you can see, we do have some flowers, some snapdragons, some mums, and we also have a cover crop going. Most of these will be either just wrapping up or be taken out completely in the next few weeks. And then the cover crop, what we'll do is just till that under, and it'll add to the nutrients for the ranunculus and whatever else we're going to be doing in here this winter. So yeah, it's really exciting again to be working on things for next year. Your mind's already going to springtime and summer, even though we're just getting into the early days of fall. So it's fun work, and I'm sure it'll be really rewarding once we see these beautiful flowers coming up. So the most important part, as everyone knows, is to make sure you label whatever you are working on. As again, this will be a couple-week process. You don't want to forget what you actually planted in there. Once I get all these planted, I still have maybe about 1 or 2 more bags to do. We'll go through, water everything real good, make sure it's soaked in pretty decently, and then what we'll do is just monitor the moisture level in the soil over the next few weeks, just to make sure that we're, one, not letting them dry out too much, but also not overwatering as well, because if you do overwater these, what tends to happen is you get a lot of bacteria, fungal growing in there, and that's absolutely what you don't want. As you can see back here in these 50 count trays, we did these a little bit differently. These were some of the corms that we harvested from the garden last year. I did these a few weeks ago, so we're letting them dry out a little bit, and then we water, dry out a little bit, water as they go. Once they start to sprout, you see the green coming through the soil, then that's the time you can actually really start watering pretty consistently, maybe daily, maybe every other day. Kind of just depends on where you're at, what the outside temp is. You know, if it's been 80 degrees like it has been the last couple of weeks, you probably want to pay a little bit closer attention to it. So really exciting and fun work.
Hello. Working on a wedding, cutting a few bits and bobs. It's really small. It's literally like a bouquet, a bunch of boutonnieres, and that's pretty much it. So, should be fast and easy. I made some fig jam this morning and some homemade salsa. Feeling domestic, you know? It's been a good day so far. It's a very fall-esque wedding with lots of whites and a bit of terracotta and browns.
So these are the mesh bags that Beth was mentioning earlier. We actually get these when we order in our tulips. This is what the bulbs actually come in, so we just keep them. You can, if you're obviously not ordering that amount or they don't have any of these, you can also go on Amazon.com. I'm sure there's plenty of different styles of bags like this. I know there has been a lot of people that like to use them for fruit or vegetables, for rinsing those off. So same type of idea, it's just mesh with a little pull string on it. Pretty straightforward. So what we're doing here, we have some of the ranunculus from last year that we had harvested off, and we just stored them in brown paper bags, usually in a cooler or a darker place. And then once, obviously, this time of year comes around, we will take these out. These are the light pink ones. So what I'll do usually is count out how many I'm wanting to plant of these, so roughly about 50 of them that we'll be doing. So once you count all those out, I'll just put them in here. Again, make sure you take your tag, which would be, so again, you just want to write whatever color you're using. So the light pink I'll just put on here. Put this in the bag with these, tie it up in a knot like this, and then I'll come over here to the actual tea system, compost tea system. So like this bag here, I've tied off already. I have the tag in there. We'll just let this soak. Usually we'll do about 5 to 6 bags per. Once I put the lid on, turn that on, let it run, usually about 4 to 8 hours, and then we'll pull them out, start planting them. So right now I'm just kind of going through finishing up the ones that we just soaked yesterday, and next batch I'll probably plant tonight, once I get back. So yeah.
So like Keith was saying, we're doing batches of the anemones and ranunculus, and partly we do what we call succession planting. So succession planting means that we will have them longer through the season. So we'll do a batch now, and then we'll generally do a batch in January as well. And then we might do another one, which will be outdoors, that we will plant outdoors later. So probably we'll do that in end of February. That way we can have ranunculus through June. Otherwise, when we have them in the hot houses or the high tunnel, then we just push them really fast. And that high tunnel that we're talking about, we're hoping to get heat in this winter. Fingers crossed. We're working on a system that we're going to implement in place, and then that's going to push our ranunculus even faster so that we can rotate the crop in and out really quickly. So that's our plan. And like I said, season extension for us. I guess if you were doing this in the garden, you could do the same thing. If you had a high tunnel that you wanted, or like a little greenhouse that you wanted to start some of these early and then start some more later in the season to plant out in the garden, would work as well, so that you would have continual blooms. They are a cut and come again. So the more you cut on it, the more blooms you're gonna have. So don't be afraid to cut some of those and get them into the house to enjoy, for sure. And like I said, if you're interested in purchasing some of ours, we will have a link below that you can get some for your garden. And they're just gorgeous. They are so worth growing. Once you kind of get the hang of growing them, starting them, I think that's the hardest thing for me to do, is just starting the ranunculus.
Just finishing up this little fall-inspired bouquet. Very pretty, very nice. I'm gonna give it a little trim.
Hey everyone, just had some really great news. Beth and I just got a letter from the state of Oregon officially giving us our nursery license number. So really excited here, exciting times ahead. Stay tuned.
Well, it's another day here on the farm, and we're just getting ready to load up the wedding. Riley's gonna take it. It's about 45 minutes away. It's mainly just buckets. Anyways, Keith and I are gonna continue on with the ranunculus, and later today I have a little class I'm teaching just really quickly here on the farm. It's a private group coming in. It's actually a homesteaders group, and they're just putting together beautiful table arrangements, kind of in a mason jar type style arrangement, just something really simple. So just kind of brushing up on their skills, and so that's what I've got going today. The ranunculus planting is coming along just fine. So today I'm giving you just a few tips on being really successful on growing ranunculus. Ranunculus are one of, I think hands down, one of the best flowers to grow, the most beautiful in spring besides peonies. I think they're kind of like tied together. Well, you could throw roses in there too, I guess. But they are a little bit of a challenge to get started and growing. So I thought today I would take you through this video and just kind of give you tips on how to be successful in growing those. So here it goes. So number one is, when is the best time to plant your ranunculus? Depending on your zone, basically you want to make sure that if you're in a warmer climate, you can start them in fall, but if you're in a colder climate, you definitely want to start them in early spring, usually about 4 weeks before your last frost date. So for us here, we have a little bit of shelter. So if you have a greenhouse or something that you can plant them in, go ahead and start them now. We like to start them in trays, but what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start them at the beginning of October, kind of get them going, and then we'll plant them out in the greenhouse. Now our greenhouse is pretty much frost free, but occasionally if it gets really, really cold, we will have a light frost. Ranunculus can take a light frost, but not a hard frost where the ground freezes. They don't like that. They will not survive. And so you want to make sure that you're planting them, if you plant them in fall, in a frost-free zone is best, or use some sort of landscape like frost cloth with the little bit of a netting over the top of them, something that you pull on and off. Every night you put it on and every day you pull it off kind of thing. There's usually little wires that go up and over your rows so that you don't ruin the foliage, and also that creates that airflow inside of the ranunculus area where they're planted. So our zone is a zone 8B, 9, something like that. But so for a zone 7 on up to 10, you can definitely do some fall planting as long as they have some frost coverage. If you live in a zone lower than that, you definitely want to wait, unless you have a heated greenhouse, until early spring. So that would be zones 4 through 6. So if you live in zone 4 to 6, you want to definitely wait to start them until 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost date. Start them inside where they can be nice and sheltered and get a jump start on them, and then you'll have those early blooms that you're looking for in spring. So tip number 2, pre-soaking your ranunculus corms and getting them going early is going to allow the blooms to start blooming in your garden 3 weeks prior. That's a huge jump on the season. So if you want those early blooms or want to plant them outdoors at your farm or whatever it is that you're doing as a cut flower grower or, gardener, you just want some early blooms and maybe do a succession planting, this is what you need to do, is pre-soak them. And the best way to pre-soak these is we have a tea composter that you'll see that Keith is using to bubble ours. We use some mesh bags and we place them in there. So we allow them to soak for a certain amount of time, and then we place them in as you'll see, we place them in some soil and get them going. The key to having success with pre-soaking is not to soak them for too long. The temperature of the water should never exceed 55 degrees. So just kind of watching that a little bit. You like it a little bit cooler. So, just nothing so super hot or anything like that. That's not a good thing. So you want to be able to also have some sort of, water aeration. And we use our tea composter when we're not making tea compost to do our corms, but we're doing a lot of them. So if you're in the home, you can just leave your, sink drip on in a bowl and just kind of let the water kind of drip through that. That also allows the water to stay nice and clear when you're doing it in the home. And you can change it through whatever corms you're putting in. So like say you have several different varieties, that will allow you to change it out, put your next ones in. So 4 hours is kind of what we like to soak our corms for. Sometimes I've done it longer, sometimes I've done it less. The longer you soak them, the more problems you're going to have getting them to pre-sprout, and part of it is just they're going to rot. So too wet, they rot. So tip number 3 is to make sure that your soil that you're planting your corms in is not too moist and not too dry. We like to use a tray. We add actually a piece of paper down so that the drainage holes, it's not as much, I guess. I don't know how to explain that, but it helps hold the soil in and then also helps hold the moisture just right. I would recommend for a home grower to just use a tray that doesn't have any holes in it. Make sure you have level soil in there that is just a couple inches deep, and then put your corms on top of that. You want to do the octopus legs down and then add another layer on top of that. Set it in a cool, darker room. We tend to just kind of put them underneath, even in the greenhouse, like where our, we have like trays and trays and trays, but so when you stack them up on top of the shelving, so some of the lower ones are a little bit darker, they have kind of filtered light. And And so that's where we start ours. Sometimes this time of year, it tends to be pretty cool and we don't have to worry so much about it getting too hot in there for the ranunculus. But if you lived in a hotter climate, I would suggest that you kind of put them in an area that is a little bit cooler and not having those high heat temperatures or direct sun on them. You also want to avoid areas that have high humidity, like a greenhouse sometimes can be like that. Ours is very ventilated right now, so we don't have a problem with it. And again, it's very cool. But if your climate is very humid already, you might consider putting them like in your basement or things like that where it's a little bit darker and cooler. When you're pre-sprouting your ranunculus, you definitely want to just make sure the soil isn't too wet. I mean, that's just the number one tip. Too dry. You just really want to like take your finger and just really feel, because sometimes on the top it feels very dry, but then down below it's really, really moist. Once you get leaves, then you can water, and then that is the time for you to place out. So number 4 is planting out your ranunculus after you've restarted it. So after you've pre-sprouted, you want to place them in your garden about 2 inches deep and about 9 inches apart. Now here on our farm, we tend to squeeze ours in because we're in production. So we will go like 6 inches apart and we do just fine. The one thing that you have a problem sometimes with is just the aeration. So sometimes you might get a fungal disease if you are in a climate that has a lot of humidity. So following those rules as far as, 9 inches apart, you could even go 10 if you really have an airflow problem. But for us, that's what works for us. And so you just kind of have to, in any growing, somebody came to me the other day, and I'm going down a rabbit hole, but somebody came to me the other day and they said, I hear all these different techniques of planting ranunculus and everybody does it a little bit differently. And I'm like, that's how it is. And it's just kind of what works for you in your garden and in your climate. So you have to take all these conditions in. It's not just a straightforward thing. And I think that's what makes gardening so fun and challenging, is that each garden, each climate, each microclimate of your garden is so very different. And you just kind of have to understand what is going on around you in your own individual spaces and what works best for you as a gardener. So back to my planting them out. You want to make sure that it's above freezing, that you don't have any freezing going on. If you do, make sure you have some sort of coverage, whether you're using heavy mulch or straw or something like that, or covering them at night with a frost cloth. If you're outside in the garden, have one of those really rare late frosts, things like that. So just being mindful. Also, when you're planting them out like this, I'm really into like making sure your colors are cohesive with whatever else is around, especially in the gardens. So you don't want this just random colors everywhere. At least me, I don't know. Some people do, I guess. But for me, I like to have, clumps of shades of pink or whites or whatever I'm doing, more than just a single corm here and a single corm here, just lining them out. Or straight lines in a garden bed is ridiculous, unless you're growing for a cut flower production. If you're growing them in a flower bed, then do 20 corms or 10 corms in a little area, kind of like you would do for tulips or narcissus, like the daffodils. So those are kind of things that you want to kind of plant in a mass planting. Ranunculus are a cool climate flower. So once the temperatures start reaching consistently above 70 degrees, they start to piddle out. And also as a cut flower farmer, the more you're cutting on them, you're pulling all that energy out all the time and it's trying to replenish. And so they will start to piddle out as well. I've noticed that some varieties, some colors do better than others. That's just my own experience. I haven't documented it or anything like that other than in my head. I've just noticed that some things will perform even when it gets hot, and in the greenhouse that they'll just perform, where other colors will piddle out really, really quickly. So it's kind of fun to try different ones to just kind of understand what you might like about them, what you don't like, and just, experiment. Again, planting some in a tunnel and then some outside is ideal for a cut flower farmer. That way you're extending that season. And also depending on what climate you're in. We're in Oregon zone, I think it's 9 now, but we were in 8B. And so it's just very conducive to growing flowers. And we can get a really long season out of ranunculus, where some climates, they just, barely have a spring and then they jump right into summer and they're going to struggle just a little bit more. Okay, another tip for you is that ranunculus are generally considered or treated as an annual, even though you can harvest the corms and be able to preserve them in a, like we'll harvest, let the tops die, like pull the whole plant out, let the tops die, and then be able to take the corm, cut it off, and we put it in a paper bag and into the cooler. Or you could place it in a basement or something like that where there's not any moisture or anything like that. It's just kind of cool and dark. And you can re-plump those back up. Ranunculus can live forever in a bag like that. Usually throughout the summer months, we will have them in the cooler. If you're a home gardener, you can put them in your basement, in a cool, dark closet, or whatever you have that works well to keeping things, even if you had a cellar or something like that, just in a bag, dark, and you can reuse them next year. They are kind of expensive, so doing this method is actually really, really helpful on the wallet and will allow your garden to really flourish and be able to share some of the corms with other folks. So ranunculus, after they start to flower, to know when to cut them is key because the flower itself can be really, really hard and you want to wait until it feels like a marshmallow, just that soft give to it before you harvest. The ranunculus will open during the day and close back up at night. So first thing in the morning to cut them is perfect. They are considered a cut and come again. So the more you cut on them, the more they're going to produce. And so that's why they are so giving and so rewarding that you don't have to be afraid of, cutting them and then just having a bare spot in the garden, in your cutting garden or whatever. The more you cut them, the more beautiful those blooms are going to come again and just be so beautiful. Another tip we have is not to over fertilize. We found that when we over fertilize our ranunculus, we tend to get more bug pressure. So aphids are the biggest pressure we have. So using something like a neem oil or just, Dawn dish soap and water mixed together and sprayed on your blooms. I try and do it before, like cut through and then spray. So that's another really great tip for you. The other thing is down at the very base. So this is interesting. When you get aphids, they kind of go around the ring of where the neck of the stem comes up and then the flower head comes. They're hidden down under there. So just kind of checking underneath each ranunculus. If you're a big grower, if you just check a few and know that you have a problem, get on it early because otherwise it can be pure devastation and you just have to take the crop out. So don't over fertilize is key for that. We generally will use like just a compost down and then it has some nutrients in the soil prior to whatever we had in there before, and usually it's mums. We kind of rotate between mums or celosia or gomphrena in the greenhouses. Those are kind of our staple crops that we rotate through there. So they'll have some nutrients in there, but it's not like this overwhelming amount of fertilizer. Anyways, the most important part is just to keep trying. If you fail at growing ranunculus or anemones, just keep going at it. Sometimes what I'll do is buy a bag and just do half the bag in case something happens. A predator comes in and eats them, like mice and things like that, which we don't have too much of an issue here on the farm, but it can happen. Or that I over soak them and they rot, or something like that. So just holding back a few of them, starting a little bit at a time, also ensures that you will have great success. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video this week on growing ranunculus. I hope you try them. If you do and have success or want to put a message down below for other people that might, just say your zone and what works best for you, and maybe some pro tips that you might have in growing in your zone would be fun to hear from everybody. So until next time, much success in all you do and grow, and we'll be seeing you shortly back here at Crowley House very soon. And to all of you, happy fall gardening. I hope you're getting out there with the pumpkins and all the fall things that need to be done before the winter sets in. We are looking forward to a few more episodes coming up very soon on some fall gardening and winter gardening. So we hope you will hang out with us through the season as our little lives are just full and changing with the nursery and everything like that. So anyways, bye-bye.